Dregs, I mean, you practically dropped the mic 2 days ago when you were on the show, and we started talking about Mitch Marner. And I have to be honest, I didn't feel like you said anything that should take anyone by surprise. I mean, maybe you kind of put it bluntly. You didn't really beat around the bush about not being surprised if Marner and his agent are on a plane come June 26th when other teams can start courting him, and that you're looking at big dollars. But it seemed to ruffle a lot of feathers with Leafs fans. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I can appreciate that, you know, the Maple Leafs fans, like a lot of Canadian hockey fans in general, are fairly well educated on the salary cap world. And, you know, I think Toronto Maple Leafs fans look at the core of this team, and Mitch Marner is a fundamental piece of that core, and they can see that this team is developing in the right direction. You know, hope for more this year than what they got in the loss in Game 7, but they can still see that the pieces are there to build a contending team. Well, if the finances don't work, and you have to remove either Marner from the equation or other pieces to put Marner into the equation, along with two other guys making $11+ million. Well, how do you make that work? It's never happened before. So I think just the idea of dismantling to build is problematic in the mindset of the educated Toronto Maple Leaf fan. And, you know, because Marner is the last into the pool, he's becoming a villain in this process. And that is grossly undeserved, in my opinion. Why should he be? You know, I mean, you know, Austin Matthews didn't leave a ton on the table, did he?
No.
You know, 11.5 is pretty big money for Austin Matthews. You know, John Tavares, you know, comes in as an $11 million ad. Tavares left money on the table because he could have stayed and made more. And Toronto wasn't comfortable getting it to 11, but they went to 11 because it's John Tavares. Again, that's not Mitch Marner's problem. So I'm not preaching on his behalf. I just don't understand why, you know, this market and other markets believe that when you've earned a right to maximize your financial return, why is that such a bad thing to do when no one else has taken the hometown discount or the discount, you know, to keep the group together? Nobody else is doing that, so I don't understand why everybody thinks Marner should.
I think it's a grander case, and I know Fez obviously wants to make a comment on Marner before we go to the other RFAs. At least what I'm sensing from people, Dregs, is you look at this team, and at the end of the day, let's be blunt, they've really not accomplished what you would expect a team to accomplish in the sports world to then demand that kind of money, right? They haven't even made it out of the first round. So I feel like that's where a lot of fans are coming from. Well, like they're upset at the whole process of restricted free agency. And again, I'm not just saying it with the Leafs, although I'm hearing mostly from Leafs fans, but I'm sure you can look at Edmonton as an example of that, of when they were signing a lot of their restricted free agents to these big contracts. And you're kind of like, well, what have you done for me lately, right? And now we're going to hear about another class. I mean, this is a great RFA class, but I think a lot of people are kind of sitting there going, but what have they done?
I get that, but where was the outrage when Matthews signed his 5-year extension?
No, it's true. I get it. Trust me, I get it.
Yeah. You know, and you can't disconnect. It's not comparing apples to oranges. It's apples to apples. And I understand that there's a bit of a bump and a premium on a center position. You know, Austin Matthews is the number one center for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I might be willing to wash a little bit of that based on everything else that Marner brings to the community. Where's Matthews? I assume he's in Arizona. That's what I was told, you know, which is fine. He's entitled to go back to his home. But, you know, you've got Mitch, who's in the community on a weekly basis, doing everything that he does in season and out of season. And on top of that, John Tavares doesn't have the season he has without Marner's contribution. You know, it would be a fun process to go through all of the goals that John Tavares scored this year, where Mitch Marner was, a primary assist, if you would. And how many of those goals were, I mean, you got to execute and you've got to finish. So I'm not belittling John Tavares. He put the puck in the net, and he did it, with consistency. But how many of those were, man, you can't miss, you know, where a third-line player would find a way to put the puck in the net because of the creativity of Mitch Marner?
Hey, I said he made Zach Hyman look like an all-star. I've said that numerous times, right?
But as long as he makes 9 or 9.5, you're happy with him.
Yeah.
That's the part I don't understand. He's great as long as he doesn't make $11 million or 10 plus.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to start volunteering your services, Dregs, but we love you, but just keep volunteering.
Well, that's the funny part too. We in the media and the fans can separate themselves because, and I get it, we don't make the millions and millions of dollars that pro athletes make. But is any one of us willing to take less?
Oh, hells no.
No, of course
not.
Well,
no, that's a great point, Drakes. But I guess the question is, okay, so you understand Marner's use of leverage here. He's got one piece of leverage. It's the July 1st threat of the offer sheet. So he's got to try and push it to that and show that he is willing to play elsewhere. But if you're the Leafs, Dregs, don't you have to push the other side of the argument, which is, hey, you're the most popular Maple Leaf. Look at all the money you're making off the ice. You are Toronto. Do you really want to leave Toronto? It's a bit of a game of chicken, isn't it? Because I have to believe Mitch Marner doesn't want to leave Toronto and only will if it's a course of last resort.
And I think you've characterized it perfectly. There's no way that Mitch Marner doesn't want to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He loves everything about being a Toronto Maple Leaf, but at what cost? And that's why I think that Kyle Dubas has got to be creative and aggressive at the same time. Try and leave a little bit on the table from a Leafs perspective if you can. But do we honestly think that Marner's going to take less than $10 million? I don't. And when he signs, if he signs at less than $10 million, I'll be the first to say I was wrong, or I will report how it went from 10 plus 11 down to 9 and whatever 9 would be. I don't see that happening. But if you're the Maple Leafs, before June 26th, I can't imagine from a Leafs management or an ownership standpoint, they want Mitch Marner on an airplane going to visit who knows what team or teams. That would be awful for the Maple Leafs. And if Marner is willing to get on that plane, then I think he's come to terms with the reality that if he's willing to go to that length, then he's willing to sign that offer sheet, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, why go through the charade? Why do it? But it's incumbent on the Maple Leafs to make a decision. Draw your own line in the sand. If Kyle Dubas doesn't think he can stomach more than 9.5, then put 9.5 on the table and force Mitch Marner and company to make a decision. If that's first and final offer from the Toronto Maple Leafs, well, then Mitch, family, and representation, they've got some thinking to do. Are we willing to go through this process, which could include trade? I asked someone close to the Maple Leafs, is there even a 1% chance that Marner could get traded? And I can't even tell you what the response was. It wasn't pleasant.
Oh.
In terms of, what are you smoking, type of thing. So
what are you smoking in terms of you're damn right there's a chance of a trade?
No, the opposite.
Okay.
That there doesn't.
So there's no chance of a trade to that person's point of view.
To that person's point of view.
Right.
But a lot can change depending on the tone of this negotiation. Now, some of our colleagues reported that Darren Ferris and Kyle Dubas were spotted in Buffalo at the Combine having a conversation. Well, yeah, of course they had a conversation, and the plan is that they will talk again at some point this week. But talk doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sure that Toronto wants the Marner camp to put a number and a term into a negotiation. Here's the bottom line. Here's what we want to this is where Marner needs to get to. Well, why would you do that? You're negotiating against yourself. It's up to the Maple Leafs to put the number and the term on the table and then force the player to make a decision or negotiate off whatever that number and that term is. The term is going to be crucial here as well. If Toronto thinks they're getting Mitch Marner for 6 years, and I think they would push for that because you want to stagger off Matthews, it's going to be real hefty. The price of poker probably goes up on a 6-year term. Yeah. I think he's going to want 5 and would prefer 4, but it's insanity to think that the Toronto Maple Leafs would give him a 4-year deal and walk him into unrestricted free agency. Why would they do that?